Hi, everyone, and welcome to JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services Tier 1 training. We will be covering how to use the Tier 1 stewardship tool to create and edit JSTOR collections, as well as how to use the collections usage dashboard. This webinar is appropriate for any stewardship Tier 1 subscriber using the collection loader tool to create collections. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Behrens, and I am a partner and user education lead at Ithaca. I am joined today by my colleagues, Ann Connolly and Lee Dotson. Ann is the Senior Product Manager for Stewardship, and she will be helping answer some questions today after the training. Ann, if you want to say hi.
Hello. Yeah, I work on Tier 1, among other things, and I'm happy that there's so many folks here today.
Thanks. Lee is the Senior Digital Collection Success Manager, and she's also here to say hi, as you've probably received some emails from her previously at the onset of your stewardship participation.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad so many of you were able to join us today. It's great to see you all.
We've created a handout for this webinar where you will find relevant resources, including links to videos and support articles. We hope you will refer to this handout after the webinar as you explore the features and functionalities we'll learn about today. And we're going to be putting a link to the handout in the chat right now, which is going to appear in your go-to panel. And to find the chat, look in the upper right corner of your go-to panel to move between webinar tabs. A chat icon will likely pop up as soon as we enter the link. I also want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. We will post the recording on YouTube and link it in your webinar handout, which will be pinned in the webinar chat shortly. All attendees will also receive a link to the handout and the recording in a follow-up email, and the handout will be updated to include relevant questions in an FAQ format from our session today. After you exit the webinar today, as always, you'll be taken to a brief 3-question survey where we'd like you to share your thoughts about how helpful this was for you. And if you don't have time to take the survey immediately, it will also be sent to you by email in about an hour. So here is our agenda with the topics we're about to cover. And rather than slides, I will be taking you straight into the live stewardship site. We're going to be looking at creating and updating your institutional landing page, creating and editing collections, and then we will look at the collections usage dashboard. There is a questions area in your go-to panel where you can enter questions at any time, and we'll hopefully have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions at the end of the training. So I will leave these slides for now and open up JSTOR and Stewardship, and we are also all going to turn our cameras off so you can see my screen better. Okay. So here we are on Stewardship, and I'm already logged in here. This is, of course, the back end, essentially, of where you upload and build your collections to publish them to JSTOR. The first thing we're actually going to look at is what your users see when they look for your published collections on JSTOR, and that is called the institutional landing page. That's a page you can set up even before you publish any collections to JSTOR. And once you publish any content, JSTOR users will be able to see what collections you have and learn more about your institution. So let's take a look actually at the JSTOR site and look at your end user's experience. So here I am on JSTOR.org. And if JSTOR users ever want to see what collections are from their own institution, they can use the Browse menu and choose the link for your institution's collections. If the JSTOR user is authenticated by logging in or within the institutional IP range, this will take them to your institutional landing page. This is an important page for you to keep updated with your institution's branding and details about your collections. On my screen here is just an example landing page from the JSTOR education team. Yours will obviously be specific to your own institution. This page is important because it is the page on JSTOR that anyone who's able to access your published collections can see to learn more about your institution. You can customize the banner image, the institutional description, and of course have institutional branding here. You can use your institutional logo. If you publish any collections publicly, any JSTOR user, not just those from your institution, will be able to see this landing page by following the collection link in their search results when items from your collections are returned. Public collections are also visible for any user by going to the Browse menu and choosing Collections. And this is a large list of public collections, and each one of these where it says part of, that will take you to that institution's institutional landing page. So for instance, this first one is from Johns Hopkins, and here is their institutional landing page. So to edit your own institutional landing page, you would go to Collection Loader. So I'm sorry, to Stewardship, to the Collection Loader tool. So we'll go back there now. And I'm going to select this button at the top that says Edit Institution Page. This is where I would upload my banner image. I can replace the one I have currently if I like, and my institutional logo. And I can enter or edit the institutional description here. I can always change any of these at any time in the future. And once I click Save at the top, they'll be updated on the JSTOR site within a few minutes. So next, we're going to create a new collection. So here on Stewardship, I'm going to choose the Home option in the sidebar. And I just wanted to point out first, there's some important information on the home page, including details about how much storage your collections are currently using. So if you scroll down, you'll see details about how much of your audio and video allowance you are using as well. And as you may know, we recently added audio and video capabilities to Tier 1, and you are allowed up to 100 hours combined of audio and video files. And then further down are more statistics about the number of collections and items you have, as well as a link to a support article about creating a collection. If you ever run into any issues or have any questions, note that there's a chat box at the bottom of the screen here. During normal East Coast business hours, our support team is standing by to help you with live support. And you can minimize this chat box if it's in your way also. Okay, so as you know, the Tier 1 tool is intended to be used for existing cataloged collections that are ready to be uploaded and published to JSTOR. You should have your records already cataloged or exported in a spreadsheet ready to upload. So to create a new collection, I'm going to select Add Collection at the top of the screen. And I'll enter the collection name. And I can choose here whether I want this collection to be publicly available as an open access collection or limited to users in my institution only. And I'm going to choose my institution for the sake of this demo. Next, we will see the Import Metadata spreadsheet page where I can import the complete spreadsheet that I already have for this collection. There is some information on this page about required and recommended fields. File name is actually the only required field, but we do recommend that you have at least these fields that are listed here: title, creator, subject, description, date, and location. And that's for maximum discoverability of your content by end users. You can, of course, have any other fields that you'd like to use or omit any of these fields if they're not relevant to your content. One other note about data, if you would like to create any compound objects upon upload, meaning associating multiple images with one record, we do have some special instructions for creating compound objects in this way. You should only include the first file name in any group of related files, and those files must use the syntax of a matching base file name followed by an underscore and number. And then when you upload your media files, those matching the base file name will be associated with the metadata automatically. That sounds more complicated than it is, so to show you what I mean, I'm going to show you my data file that I'm about to upload. Just drag it over here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. So here are my file names, and you can see that a few of these have a base file name followed by an underscore and then 001.jpg in this case. We do have this information, of course, detailed on our support site if you're not sure in the future what to do. This is very clearly written in a support article. So I'm going to move this back out of the way. So I'm going to select my metadata file. And click upload. Now I'm going to be taken to the review and edit screen. So on this screen, I will be able to see all of the fields that the tool has created for my uploaded data. I will scroll down to see all of the fields, and these came directly from my spreadsheet. And this also shows me example data, example values from my data. This is not a screen where I can edit the metadata itself. Rather, it's a place to review the fields that were created for the project. Some of your fields may have different labels from the fields you imported. If this is the case, you will see text saying updated next to the field label. For example, at the bottom of my screen here, a field that I imported called country in my spreadsheet was changed to the creation site field automatically in order to work better with sorting and filtering on JSTOR. If this doesn't make sense to me, or if I need to change this or any other field label, I can click on the field label to make any changes and just type right in here. Please note though, if you change a field that was updated like this one was to a default field, it will become a custom field and will then lose the JSTOR sorting and filtering properties. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and keep this field called creation site. So when you finish reviewing your field labels, you can click next at the top of the screen. And now I'm taken to the upload media screen. So on this screen, I can upload the relevant media files for this collection. And just a troubleshooting note, if you run into any issues with uploading your media files and matching them to your metadata, you should make sure that your media files have file names and extensions that exactly match the metadata you just uploaded. And that includes capitalization, even with the file extension. So back to my metadata file here. For instance, I have .mov all caps here. I would need to make sure that that is exactly the same if this file, for whatever reason, isn't uploading. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose my media files. And click upload. Okay, so while the files are uploading, I can edit my collection landing page. Excuse me. This differs from the institutional landing page we looked at earlier because this is specific information about this collection, not about my institution. So if I go back into JSTOR, I'm on JSTOR here, and if I open up the first collection in this Johns Hopkins institutional landing page, I can see this collection landing page for this particular collection. So let's go back to Collection Loader, or to the Collection Loader tool in Stewardship, and this is where I can enter the collection description, choose a representative image for my collection that will appear on that collection landing page, and upload a caption if I wanted to for that collection landing page. And right here, I can choose the media download size. This is a download size for images in my collection. I can choose for users to be able to download the maximum size or various sizes, or I can restrict downloading entirely. And if your collection includes non-image files like PDFs, audio, or video, you can choose whether or not to restrict downloads. Okay, when you're finished with this page, you can click next. And again, this is a page you can always come back to and update later. And next, I'm taken to the Stewardship collections page where I can see all of my collections. When I'm ready, I can click Publish for the collection to be published to JSTOR. Or you can select the collection name to see the items in the collection. So I'm going to look at the items that I just uploaded, and note it usually takes a couple of minutes for all the images to upload. So don't worry if you see something like this without the images. Once these are loaded, I will see which of the items created compound objects. Some of them might say 2 or 3 files underneath, and then I'll know that the compound object upload worked. But of course, we have to wait for the images to load for a moment before we see that. Okay, So once you have a collection, we'll talk now about adding to a collection. You can add more records to it whenever you'd like. To do this, just open the collection that you'd like to update, and I'll just continue to use the same collection we've been working on. And select the button at the top that says Add to Collection. You'll be taken back to that same Import Metadata spreadsheet page where you can upload an additional spreadsheet of data. And I have one ready to go here. So you will need to have a spreadsheet ready containing your existing collections field names, as well as metadata and file names for only the new items that you're adding. If the spreadsheet contains any file names that you already have in your collection, you'll get an error message and you'll have to remove those rows before importing. So you can't just add to your existing metadata and import that again. You need to create a new spreadsheet for the addition. Okay, so I'm back on the review and edit page where I can take a look at my fields again in my project, and there's no changes that I need to make, so I will click next. And here again is the upload media screen where I will add the files that match the data that I just uploaded. And just like before, the media files have to have file names and extensions that match exactly the metadata that I just uploaded. And I'll click upload. And now I'm taken right back to the main collections page. Okay, so now we can talk a little bit about editing records. I'm going to open a different collection so we don't have to wait for any images to process that we just uploaded. So I'll open this one that I created earlier called Public Architecture. On the collection page, you can see all the items in this collection, and then you can click on a record that you'd like to edit. So I'll click on this one. So here on the editing screen, I can edit the data as needed. So I can just enter a little more information to this item's title. And I'll add the creator as well of the sculpture. Okay, and then when you make any changes to a record, of course, you have to click the Save button at the top of the page. If I needed to replace a media file, I would just choose Delete Media Item and then Confirm, and then I can upload a new media file using the same window if I were replacing it. I'll just put the same one back in because I don't need to have a different image here. And then upload the file. Make sure you always save after making any changes, and this will load in a moment. If you would like any of your records, or if you would like a record to be a compound object, the other way of creating a compound object with items already uploaded into your project is by uploading additional files to a record. So I'm going to open up a different record, this one. And I would like to add a couple more image files to it. So I'm going to click the Add Media Item button and choose some additional files. And I'll click Upload. So once these are added, this record will be a compound object, and I can already see a change on the screen here. There are now 3 media files associated with this one record. Again, they might take a moment to load, or they might be there. So you might see the screen and then you'll just come back and they'll be there in a moment. Make sure you always click Save after making any changes. And then if I already published and I updated this record, I have to make sure I republish. So if I change this record by adding some files to it, I'll click Publish again, and then the record on JSTOR will be updated. Okay, so that was a lot of information about the Tier 1 Stewardship tool pretty quickly. And one last thing we're going to talk about before we get to questions is the Collections Usage Dashboard. That is a self-service dashboard where you can see where and how your published collections are being used. So to get to that, you click the Analytics link in the sidebar to launch the dashboard. And since I'm using a demo account and we don't publish anything publicly from this account, there is not any data to show here. So it's not very interesting. So I'm going to switch back to my slides to show you some screenshots with data from a participating institution who gave me permission to show their anonymized data. Okay. So here is some example data, and I've blurred the identifying information from the institution. And I'd like to first point out to you that this data came from a small university in the United States that has published fewer than 10 collections to JSTOR, some publicly and some just institutional collections. And they have some really fantastic usage showing here. As you know, when you publish to JSTOR, your content displays on JSTOR and is returned in search results alongside JSTOR content. You may therefore see a wonderful increase in usage and evidence of your collections being accessed around the world, like we see here. So here in the dashboard, you can set a date range, and in this example, it's set for the past year. And at the top of the screen, you can see the total number of requests. This means views and downloads across all of your institution's collections for the date range that you specified. So in this case, items from this institution's collections were accessed more than 40,000 times in the past year. Next to that is the percentage of total items in your collections that were accessed during this time. And in this case, 32% of the items in this collection were used in the past year. And next to that, is the number of countries where users requested your items in this date range. In the past year, users from 127 countries accessed the items in this institution's collection. So that's really exciting to see that kind of impact. And then finally at the top, you can see the number of page views of your institution's landing page within this date range. So more than 1,000 in this case. The line graph along the bottom here represents the number of item requests by collection for the date range that you selected. I blurred out the collection names to keep the institution anonymous, but you would see your own collection names next to each representative color. So you can check on your usage at points through the date range you specify and see where you might have any spikes. If you scroll down on the usage dashboard, you will see a list of the top requested items in your collections over this period. Again, I blurred those out for the slide, along with more information about what countries and institutions had the most requests on your items. And generally, the biggest user of an institution's collections is that institution itself, which was the case here. But it's interesting to see what the other institutions are. So in this case, we see several institutions in the top 10 users from the United States, but there are also institutions from Argentina, Australia, and the UK in the top 10. And at the bottom is a pie chart showing usage affiliation, meaning whether users who accessed your items were from your institution, another JSTOR using institution, or those who are not authenticated through a JSTOR institution. You can download all of this information using the download button, and that will download an Excel file, and you can even set up scheduled automatic reporting to be sent to you. So we have a few minutes left for questions, and Anne and I are going to come back onto camera and take a look at what the questions are that have come in. If you give me just a moment so I can open the questions up on my side. There was a question about if you have a support issue, who do you contact at JSTOR to get support? And I have an easy answer for that. It's on my screen right now. Support@jstor.org is who you contact for any questions with support if you have any issues about media files or other things that are not working correctly. So be sure to contact them. And again, we have that chat functionality within Stewardship, and that's really helpful because you can talk to a live person immediately that way. There was another question about the fields required on a spreadsheet for uploading. So like I mentioned, back here in Stewardship, when you're uploading a spreadsheet, oh, I don't think I can show this without starting to upload again. The only required field is file name. So really you can use any other any other fields that you like. And Anne, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here. Do you want to say anything about fields? No. Okay.
You're doing a great job, Elizabeth.
Okay. We do have a question about what file types are accepted by stewardship. As I mentioned, audio and video files are now accepted, as well as image files. We have a page on our support site it has a great chart about supported file types. I happen to have this open from earlier, so I can enter it in the chat. This is a chart on our support site about supported file types in stewardship, if you'd like to take a look at that. And I can drag it on my screen as well. So PDF files, a variety of image, audio, and video files, as well as a couple of panorama files are accepted into Tier 1 of stewardship. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. And we do have a couple of minutes left, so if you have any burning questions, feel free to type them in. And I also wanted to remind you that everyone that registered for the webinar will get that handout link in an email, and we'll be adding questions there and answers, so everyone can see the questions that came in, as well as the link to the recording.
Elizabeth, it looks like we have a question about, do you need an individual spreadsheet for each media file, one sheet per image, or can you do a bulk?
Do you want to answer that, Anne?
Sure. Yeah, you can absolutely do a bulk import. So you basically have a column for each field for as many items as you want to import. Fill out the cells for those metadata fields, and as Elizabeth was saying, ensure that you have the that you're very clear about your file names, because those are going to be really important in a variety of ways. So yeah, and then you just upload your spreadsheet, and there you go. You can do one at a time if you want. But if you have a bunch, then bulk edit or bulk import is probably much easier.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, interesting. There's a question about, and maybe you could help me out with this. Are you able to make some fields not visible to the public for adding local notes and so on? Rather than hiding not keeping a collection as institutional only, but hiding just some fields on a public collection. Is that something that's possible?
I don't believe that it is. I believe that all the fields will be visible, but I'm trying to think if there's another way that you can add sort of like hidden comments to a particular record.
I don't believe it's possible in the Tier 1 tool to have fields not publish. Yeah, everything that you enter and catalog will be published to JSTOR. But that is a good question and an interesting use case for this tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
We just have another minute. I'm just going to quickly scan the questions. Oh, interesting. Someone is asking about if they needed to update a number of records in a collection, is the best option to delete the collection and re-upload? I wonder if there's something you could quickly say, Anne, about bulk editing in this way in the Tier 1 stewardship tool. What would be the quickest way of uploading or updating a number of records at one time?
Probably depends on how many. I mean, I would say probably just to do an edit as opposed to a delete and re-upload?
Yeah, I would suggest not deleting a collection, because then you would be starting over with having a new link for the collection and making sure people can access that. But you might want to re-upload new records, that would be faster for you to the same existing collection. So your original collection still exists, and then you can delete old records if needed. That might be a workaround that you could do. And I'm sorry, there are now a number of questions that we're not going to get to.
A lot more here.
We're running out of time. We are going to paraphrase some of these questions and create an FAQ to add to that LibGuide, that handout that you're all going to get. So don't worry, in the next couple of days, that's going to be updated and sent to you all. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I really appreciate your time and attention. Again, if you ever have any questions, reach out to support@jstor.org, and you will be taken to the survey momentarily. And thanks, Anne, for your help.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks, Elizabeth, for presenting. Bye, everyone.